right, moving on, the Urban Renewal Act (PSB) aims to ensure more structured and inclusive development, embracing the principle of leave no one behind, particularly in safeguarding the rights of affected property owners. Housing and Local Government Minister Kor Ming said to protect the rights of property owners involved in PSB projects, the government will engage in negotiations with them along with the appointed implementing agencies and developers. So to discuss further on this, we have Sr Sulaiman Saheh on the line, the Director of Research, Rahim & Co International's Neighbourhood. Firstly, Sulaiman, the Urban Renewal Act aims to create sustainable vibrancy in urban areas. So how do you define inclusive, equitable and sustainable vibrancy, and what key factors need to be considered when planning urban renewal projects to ensure they meet both environmental and social sustainability goals at the same time?
Thank you very much for having us. Firstly, on urban renewal. The thrust of having urban renewal policies and agenda is to make sure that any city, especially in cities in Malaysia within our context, is to be sustainably growing and continue to be vibrant as we go along. The vibrancy of a city must be properly defined because it is supposed to be a city for all, disregarding the racial background or the socio-economic background. It is actually something that is for the best of the inhabitants of a city. And with that, that's why we term it as the goal of urban renewal is to make sure the sustainability and the growth of a city that has a inclusive, that's equitable with a sustainable vibrancy, so that it is not just benefiting only certain factions of the community. It is looking from the ground upwards for a city to be beneficial for all the inhabitants.
And from your perspective, Sulaiman, how does the Urban Renewal Act address the existing challenges of urban decay and overdevelopment in Malaysia cities? Like, are there any specific provisions in the Act that you believe are particularly innovative or impactful?
In addressing any city's growth, you can imagine the maturity of a city, how it grows from an agrarian-based town in the past, and then it was actually industrialized, and then it becomes very service-oriented, metropolitan, and there will be some suburban areas or certain districts or precincts that has grown to have an idiosyncrasy of the lower market as well as the up market areas. So to grow this the city for in terms of addressing how an urban decay, the participation of those owners within the slowly deteriorating area, or already some of it are blighted areas, already some are areas that are buildings that are unsafe to be occupied, or even underutilized areas, some areas that were relevant in the past and now it's deemed to be underutilized, should be re-looked at. And in terms of implementation of those redevelopment or regeneration or conservation, as a matter of fact of it, we need to look at the whole spectrum from the historical side, as well as the implication to the local community, as well as the community at large for the whole general market. With this, we should actually look at the urban area or the city as a whole. A city is actually a living organism. If you imagine yourself like a person, you would actually have certain parts of your limbs of which are functioning in certain manner, and this is where the cohesion of the functions, different aspects of facilities, amenities, as well as economic employment hubs for people to actually work around and live in it and play in it also. And this, what we can see from the past, how any city or even Kuala Lumpur, for example, has grown over the years, where there's a lot of developments that are coming in place. We have to avoid or mitigate the detachment risk between what is being constructed in the supply side as well as the demand. What are the actual demand from the market, so that the match must be done, so that the market can be sustainable and continue to be vibrant. And in saying that, for the urban renewal scenario, where these are essentially units that were built in the past, and now it is basically underutilized, or basically there's opportunity for us to actually make it better, the involvement of those owners is crucial, is actually essential, because they are, at the end of the day, the actual owners of the site, whether they want to redevelop, or whether there's proposal for them to join a redevelopment or regeneration or refurbishment, enhancement, revitalization of a city. That is very important to be engaged with.
I like how you say we should change our perspective of how we look at cities as living things. But maybe, Sulaiman, how can urban renewal initiatives strike a balance between modern development and also preserving cultural heritage? So what role do you see for heritage buildings and also traditional communities in the face of new urban policies in the future?
Okay, this is a very important fundamental, and it's almost like a philosophical approach to how you perceive your city should look like, or should actually be, or what offering would they actually give you. The balance between preservation of the historical significance, the tradition, the heritage that we actually have in Malaysia, as Malaysia, is actually the element that create our own identity. So in terms of new development or renewal or redevelopment, these cannot be ignored. It cannot be ignored. And in terms of redevelopment potential, where there is an opportunity for it to conserve, because it creates the character of an urban, it's actually very important as well. We can see some developers or some developments around the world where they actually maintain some of the architecturally significant buildings, or even some features within the city. It may not just be buildings, mind you. It could just be a plain or a plaza or an open space where it has some significance of certain historical significance, or even to the local community. This is where something started 20, 30 years ago or 100 years ago, where they want to be remembered with, so that it creates that character. And in terms of the potential monetization of such character, it boils down to tourism activities, because a person, especially for foreign tourists in the country, people would actually go to another city or another location to actually experience the difference and celebrate the difference and knowledge of how things are done in certain parts of the world. It's not to have a repetitive model or repetitive element that they can actually see it anywhere else. They want to see something that's unique, and that is what we can actually capitalize on.
Interesting to know that, and we shouldn't actually, we can actually learn from the different countries of the world, but we shouldn't actually implement the same thing in Malaysia. But as a leader in the real estate industry, how do you see the private sector playing a role in implementing the objectives of Urban Renewal Act? What are some of the challenges and perhaps opportunities for developers in contributing to urban renewal while ensuring sustainability at the same time?
The success of such a venture like this would depend on all the stakeholders to be engaged with properly, taking cognizance of their inputs and their feedbacks, so that we can actually entertain, or basically to address, not to entertain necessarily, but to sufficiently address and justfully addressing the different needs and interests. So like in terms of the evolution of a city or the development of a city, the role by the government or local government, federal, state, as well as local government, and the private sector in terms of developers, in terms of communities, NGOs, in terms of how the soft programming, rather than just hard programming, which is the hardware, there's also the software elements, and these two has to be intertwined and woven together so that these can actually be moving forward. But one critical element in this is that any venture would actually require some funds in terms of making it sustainable from the ESG element, the environmental aspect, the social aspects, and also the governance and transparency. We need to strengthen the drive for development as being a responsible development. We need to actually have responsible development where all this can actually be pulled in the appropriate manner, so that it is actually marketable, and also it is actually of benefit, of actual benefit to the people, to the actual local people who are actually living there or who were living there, who are the current owners, as well as potential users or purchasers or even visitors coming to an area.
And indeed, it wouldn't be successful without the support and also involvement of the community engagement as well, and also smart city solutions and data analytics, and also, like you mentioned earlier, financing schemes. So we have about 1 minute left. Maybe what is your long-term vision for Malaysia's urban areas under the Urban Renewal Act, and how can urban renewal contribute to the overall livability and competitiveness of cities in a rapidly urbanizing world?
Keeping pace with global regional growth of different cities. I think making Malaysian cities to continue to be attractive is numero uno. It's actually very important, not just for the local benefit, for the local community benefits, but also to actually continue generating business opportunities and whatnot. And this is actually the renewal scheme that we actually want to go forward. It needs to actually tackle both the demand drivers in terms of the interest of new interest or investors or purchasers coming to an area, the developers who are actually executing the development and whatnot, the regulators of government, as well as the owners themselves, the owners themselves. And in such an urban renewal where it's actually a single entity or a single commercial entity, probably it's easier to engage. Right now, the sensitivity now is when we go into renewing an area where it's already existing with existing owners or inhabitants, where we need to actually address all their needs justly and equitably.